the Chief Justice of the Republic of the Philippines, the Senior Associate Justice, and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having business before the Honorable Supreme Court of the Philippines shall give their attention, for the Court is now in session.
Please be seated.
Madam Clerk of Court, please call the cases before us.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is a continuation of the oral arguments on the consolidated petitions in GR number 271059, Representative Edsel Lagman, as substituted by Albay 1st District Representative Crisel Lagman et al. Versus the Congress of the Philippines et al. GR number 271347, Aquilino Coco Pimentel III and Pantaleon Bebot Alvarez versus Lucas P. Bersamin in his capacity as then Executive Secretary et al. GR number E-02472, Filipinos for Peace, Justice and Progress Movement Incorporated or FPJPM, as represented by its President and Chairperson, Mr. Joseph F. Kadsawan, and Chapter Officer Ms. Gloria T. Puzon versus House of Representatives et al. And GR number E-04036, Edgar R. Erice and Laila de Lima versus the Senate of the Philippines et al. Thank you, Your Honors.
Appearances, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chief Justice, Senior Associate Justice, members of the Supreme Court, Attorney Lorenzo Erin Tañada, Free Legal Assistance Group for Petitioner Lagman.
Good morning, Your Honors. I am Attorney Elmar C. Barreda of the Lagman Law Offices, and I am respectfully entering my appearance as counsel for the petitioners in GR number 271059, Your Honors, please. Thank you, Your Honors.
Good morning, Your Honors. Jericho Salenga, appearing as counsel for Aquilino Coco Pimentel III and Pantaleon Bebot Alvarez. Good morning, Your Honor.
Magandang umaga, Your Honors. I'm Joseph Lemel Bakiran, respectfully appearing as counsel for petitioners FPJPM, Your Honors.
Good morning, Your Honors. Attorney Renilyn Arellano, respectfully appearing as counsel for petitioner FPJPM. Thank you, Your Honors.
The Honorable Chief Justice, Senior Associate Justice, and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court, good morning. I'm Attorney Vopetro Angie Peña, together with Attorney Bianca Soriano and Beatriz Ana Balbacal. We appear on behalf of petitioners Edgar Erice and Laila de Lima in GR number E-04036. Representative Edgar Erice is present in court, Your Honors. Good morning.
Good morning to the Honorable Chief Justice Esmundo, Honorable Senior Associate Justice Leonen, to the Honorable Members of the Supreme Court. I'm Attorney Bianca Isabel D. Soriano, also for petitioners Erice and de Lima. Thank you, Your Honors.
For the respondents, please.
Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning to the distinguished amici. The Office of the Solicitor General re-enters its appearance on behalf of the respondents in these consolidated petitions. I am Solicitor General Darlene Marie Berberabe. With me today, Your Honors, are Assistant Solicitor General Marisa B. de la Cruz Galandines, ASG George Ortha II, ASG Jennifer Fanjalan Legaspi, ASG Samantha Kamitan, and ASG Mark Perete. Other lawyers of the OSG are in the gallery to provide assistance whenever necessary. Also with us and pursuant to this Honorable Court's directive are DepDev Undersecretary Joseph Capuno, the DepDev representative to the Investment Coordination Committee or the ICC, and DBM Assistant Secretary Romeo Balangkit, the DBM's representative to the DBCC or the Development Budget Coordination Committee, other representatives from the DBM and from the DepDev, as well as from the Bureau of the Treasury are also in the gallery. Thank you.
Okay, for the record, appearing as Amici Curiae are Professor Sulita Collias Monsod, Professor Emeritus, University of the Philippines School of Economics, Attorney Florencio Biabad, Professor of Praxis, Ateneo School of Government, Honorable Franklin M. Drilon, former President of the Senate of the Philippines, Honorable Benjamin E. Diokno, Member Monetary Board, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and Honorable Jose Maria Clemente Joey S. Salceda, former Representative and Chair, Institute for Risk and Strategic Studies, Incorporated. Associate Justice Ami Lazaro Javier will resume her interpellation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, everyone. May I call on Attorneys Lorenzo Tanyada and Elmar Coral de Barreda. Thank you. In your petition, you stated that the scheme of transferring items from programmed appropriations to unprogrammed appropriations is done in order to accommodate replacement pet projects, which are assured of funding. Can you please specify these items?
Your Honor, I'm afraid I will not be able to specify these items because what was included in the petition are the unprogrammed side which we enumerated.
Yes, correct. But it is your position.
Yes.
In the petition filed by the late Congressperson Lagman, that there was a scheme of transferring items from programmed to unprogrammed appropriations in order to accommodate pet projects. So you should have you should be able to identify these items because you made that conclusion. All right, if you cannot identify them now, please submit to the court these items. It's very important that we substantiate our conclusions.
We submit, Your Honor.
All right. Now, where did you draw the conclusion that the transfer was done to accommodate replacement pet projects which are assured of funding? Where did you get that conclusion?
May I answer, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, as stated in the petition of the late Congressman Edsa Lagman, Your Honor, during the deliberation, Your Honor, of one pending bill, Your Honor, in the Congress, Your Honor, during the interpellation conducted by the late Congressman Edsa Lagman and former also representative of the 2nd District or I think 3rd District of Albay, the Amici Curiae, Your Honor, Congressman Joey Salceda, Your Honor, it was stated, Your Honor, that these pet projects, Your Honor, as being drawn, Your Honor, is that program appropriations, let's say, for example, Your Honor, a program appropriation of a barangay hall, Your Honor, as stated in our petition.
May I interrupt you, Attorney Barreda? You are talking about the deliberations.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And these deliberations are matters of record. My question was, for you to draw the conclusion, where did you draw? Did you draw it from that deliberation? From that from those minutes of the deliberation?
Your Honor, it is our petition, Your Honor, that we draw our conclusion, Your Honor, in the practice of the Congress, Your Honor.
Yes,
from
but you are saying there is that practice, but you know, that is a conclusion of fact. What evidence supports that conclusion? For example, what are these specific pet projects?
Your Honor, we undertake, Your Honor, to submit the necessary documents, Your Honor, in order for us to suffice the allegations contained in the petition of the late Congressman Ed Salagman,
Yes,
Your Honor.
that will be fair.
Yes, Your Honor.
We don't just draw conclusions. We have to substantiate our conclusions. All right. You also stated that the transfer is effected because the funding under unprogrammed appropriations is assured. What made you conclude that the funding for these so-called specific pet projects, when moved to unprogrammed appropriations, are assured of funding?
Your Honor, if we go back to the Pimentel case, this is the reason why they were trying to get the funds from PhilHealth in order to fund the unprogrammed appropriations, Your Honor. As you were the ponente.
So you're drawing the conclusion, your conclusion from the ruling of the court?
Yes, Your Honor.
What part of the ruling of the court
Well,
states that?
well,
That when moved, items that are originally under programmed appropriations are moved to unprogrammed appropriations for the reason that if it is moved, then funding is assured. What part of our decision states that?
there is nothing in the decision that states that. But since, Your Honor, that this becomes within the ambit now of the executive in order to identify which of the unprogrammed appropriations will be funded. So it's as if it is a post-enactment discretion.
It is as
Sorry
if. All right. So, you don't believe the Solicitor General when she repeatedly says that while programmed appropriations are committed by the government, hence are assured of funding, unprogrammed appropriations are not committed by the government, not assured of funding, and in fact, dependent on the happening of one or more of the three triggers that she mentioned. You don't believe that?
I believe that, Your Honor. Yes.
So, you just debunked your own argument. All right. So, because I will follow your argument, are you now saying that the element of commitment is present, whether programmed or unprogrammed?
Well, for Madam Justice, with regard to program, there's a commitment of funding.
Correct.
With regard to unprogrammed, there is none until those triggers happen.
Yes.
Now, in the 2024 budget, the reason that the PhilHealth funds and the other GOCC funds were supposedly taken, not supposedly, but taken by the government based on the GAA, was to now fund programs in the unprogrammed appropriations.
Correct. but your statement is this: the items under the program appropriation are moved to unprogrammed precisely because the unprogrammed appropriations are assured of funding, which is contradictory to the repeated statement of the Solicitor General. And now to your statement.
Your Honor, if there was no attempt to acquire the funds of
Yes,
PhilHealth,
but I don't want just attempt. I just want the real thing here. All right. So, is it fair to say, based on your position, that for unprogrammed items, the commitment for funding is in reality much stronger than for program funds?
yes, Your Honor.
Why do you say that?
Because it's based on, there has to be excess funds, new loans to fund
Assured,
program.
but are these not triggered by three
Yes,
events?
those are the
So how can these events be assured of being triggered?
they will not be.
They too, the happening is also contingent. So where is the assured funding there?
Your Honor, I'm just basing my argument based on what happened in the 2024 budget when there was the move to acquire the PhilHealth funds, the PDIC funds, and other GOCs.
All right. Yes, I go to my next question. Is there an invalid exercise of the power of the purse each time a programmed item is transferred to unprogrammed appropriation?
There is none, Your Honor, as long as it does not exceed what was submitted by the Office of the President under the NEP.
So, you're saying that the provision on unprogrammed appropriation is not unconstitutional per se?
Yes.
Yes. So it depends on certain conditions, compliance with certain requisites
Yes, Your Honor.
before it could be called unconstitutional.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So, has the transfer of items from programmed to unprogrammed been a historical practice of Congress?
Yes, it has been, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay, so can you please cite specific GAAs to establish the so-called historical practice of Congress?
There were under the administration of President Aquino, where there were unprogrammed appropriations, but they were not eventually also funded because the triggers were not met, Your Honor.
All right. So next time, can you please submit to the
Yes.
court the historical
Yes, Your Honor.
movement of this GAAs, unprogrammed appropriation? So my last question for you is this. Is a long-standing historical practice a valid ground to sustain its constitutionality?
It depends, Your Honor. If there are actions that later on would show unconstitutional acts done by one branch of the legislative branch of government, then historical practice can be stopped by the court or reviewed by the court whether it is still within the bounds of the Constitution.
Okay, very well. Thank you. May I call on Attorney Joseph Lemuel Bakiran and Attorney Reneline Arellano. Thank you. In your petition, you submitted that automatic appropriations are expenditures which do not require annual legislative action by Congress by virtue of their nature and enabling laws for specific purposes. According to you, one of these automatic appropriations is the SAGF, or the Special Accounts in the General Fund. Correct? Yes. You enumerated enabling laws which provide for SAGF. And we flash this now on the screen, the laws. All right. Attorney Cuevas, will you please be kind enough to read into the records this enumeration?
Republic Act Number 11239, Special Road Fund, RA Number 9496 and RA Number 10848, Agricultural Competitiveness Fund, RA Number 8800, Remedies Fund and Competitiveness Enhancement Measures Fund of the Safeguard Measures Act, RA Number 10654, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, Fisheries Management Fund, RA Number 9335, Reward and Incentives Fund of the Attrition Act of 2005.
Yes, thank you very much. Council, is it your position that the funds assigned to these accounts are fixed by their respective enabling laws?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. So much so that these funds cannot be increased or decreased by Congress in the GAA.
That is correct, Your
Correct.
Honor.
Did Congress violate this under the 2024 and 2025 GAAs?
As far as we are concerned, Your Honor, we only have the data for the 2025 GAA, Your Honor.
Yes, so did Congress violate this?
Yes, Your Honor.
How?
By increasing the amounts stated in the special provisions of this SAGF, of these special accounts in the general funds, Your Honor.
So are you saying that Congress increased the amount for SAGF and it acted ultra vires, even without looking into the particular enabling laws?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Do the enabling laws contain a clause for augmentation by Congress outside the sources from which these funds are coming from?
As far as the Motor Vehicles Users Fund is concerned, Your Honor, there is a clause that specifically, Attorney Bakiran will answer for that, Your Honor.
Well, as far as the special road fund, Your Honor, the law is silent as to the right to augment, Your Honor. However, this previous provision, the Section 8, which was amended by Republic Act 11239, there is the law says that aside from the motor vehicles users charge, it can be augmented from other sources. However, with the enactment of Republic Act 11239, the law is silent as to augmentation, Your Honor.
So, which means that
It cannot be augmented from other sources.
otherwise it should have been maintained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. So, because you cited it in your enumeration, the Safeguard Measures Act
Yes, sir.
under RA 8800. This act authorizes the DA, the DTI, and the Tariff Commission to collect such fees, charges, and safeguard duties that are deemed necessary. 50% of the revenue collected from such fees, charges, and safeguard duties shall be set aside in a remedies fund, which shall be earmarked for the use of these agencies in the implementation of remedies. The remaining 50% shall be deposited under a special account to be created in the National Treasury and shall be earmarked for competitiveness enhancement measures for the industries affected by the increased imports. Now, noticeably, in the 2025 GAA, the BICAM increased the remedies fund from 10 million to 38.569 million. And the Competitiveness Enhancement Measures Fund from 250 million to 1.250 billion. Okay. Can an agency's SAGF be increased by Congress through sources that are not indicated in the enabling law?
We respectfully submit, Your Honor, that the Congress may not increase the fund appropriated by the executive.
Yes. In the 2025 GAA, applying this provision of RA 8800, which specifies the percentage of the fund to be assigned to the revenue, to remedies fund, and to special account to be created in the National Treasury for competitiveness enhancement. Did the 2025 GAA violate this assigned percentage?
Yes, Your Honor, because the amount that should be indicated in the NEP, Your Honor, was the result of the fiscal programming made by the executive department, Your Honor.
Did the Congress here in fact source funds that are not that are outside the funds collected by way of charges and fees?
Did you have numbers?
MVUC. Yes, Your Honor. With respect to MVUC, Your Honor, we have the number.
For specifically, Your Honor, for the motor vehicle user charge, it is we humbly submit that it was sourced from other sources other than what's stated by the enabling law. If we go to the special provision, Your Honor, under the GAA, it was stated there that the special road fund shall only constitute around 16 billion plus. However, Your Honor, in the line item, it is now 34 billion. If you compare that with the national expenditure program provided by the President, Your Honor, the special provision remains at 16 billion, and at the same time, the line item remains at 16 billion. Therefore, Your Honor, it is the humble submission of the petitioners that the excess amount of the 16 billion that was mentioned was sourced from other sources other than the motor vehicle users charge, Your Honor.
All right. On that score, we will ask the good Solicitor General to please furnish us with the outside sources that raised the road users fund.
Your Honor,
Yes.
to submit
Yes.
subsequently.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor,
Thank
we will
you.
comply. Thank you.
All right. You're both excused.
Thank you,
Your Honor. Now, Attorney Salenga.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Yes, good morning. In your petition, you stated that the President's certification of urgency of House Bill number 8980, which was later enacted into the 2024 GAA, was invalid because when he did so, there was no public calamity or emergency to justify it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right? In our PhilHealth decision, though, the court ruled with finality that the only appropriate judge of whether a certification of urgency is proper is the Congress. No one else, not even the court, absent any proof that it is tainted with grave abuse of discretion. It is for Congress that this certification is intended, and so it is Congress alone which stands as the judge of its proper usage. When
Yes, Your
you
Honor.
challenge anew the validity of the President's certification of urgency of House Bill 8980, are you asking the court to reconsider its ruling on
Yes,
the
Your-
issue in the PhilHealth case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes?
Yes, Your Honor.
You don't, but you did not file a motion for reconsideration.
Your Honor, we were not party to the PhilHealth case, but to this case, Your Honor, Pimentel versus Bersamin, we are alleging, Your Honor, and arguing, Your Honor.
So you're not bound by the rulings of this court being part of the law of the land and
Yes, Your Honor.
being immutable.
Yes, Your
Because
Honor.
it has become final and executory.
Your Honor, there's always room for
For improvement.
Or subsequent decisions, Your Honor.
Yes,
Just
correct.
like in,
But it is also your duty, all right, to offer argument to dismantle our ruling in the PhilHealth case, which, by the way, is only 6 months old.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, to be frank, Your Honor, I am not counsel to the original or that just 6-month-old decision of Pimentel versus the House of Representatives,
It's all
Your
right.
Honor.
You want to challenge it now?
Now, ma'am.
All
Yes,
right.
Your Honor.
So in challenging it,
Yes,
you
Your Honor.
must dismantle the ruling of the court.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Salenga.
Welcome, Your Honor.
Yes. You
Welcome.
may take your seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I respectfully call for Professor Monson. Thank you. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, by way of trivia, you know, you were our guest in the OSG twice. Can you recall that? Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes, yes.
my memory is not as good as it once was.
When the executive started requiring flag raising ceremony every Monday.
Yes,
Yes.
now
I
I
was
recall.
assigned, okay, to invite guests. And you know, you were our guest twice, not just once. And each invitation of ours, you graciously accepted it. So I'd like to thank you again. I think I haven't thanked you enough. Thanks.
It was my honor.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And you were so much younger then. So was I.
Yes.
So was I.
We have both reached ripe old
Yes.
ages.
Graciously, I would like to believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Professor, during the first oral arguments, you mentioned that the unprogrammed appropriations are our policymakers' new form of work,
Yes.
which the court struck down as unconstitutional in Belgica. That unprogrammed appropriation is just a repackaging or under a new label. My first question is, with the pork barrel before Belgica had broad purposes.
I beg your pardon?
Yes. The pork barrel before Belgica had broad purposes.
Yes.
Yes. Is this feature found in the unprogrammed appropriations now?
Well, Your Honor, the unprogrammed appropriations has been used as a new form of pork barrel, because before the pork barrel was all the congressmen were entitled to certain amounts of money and the senators were entitled to certain amounts of money. It was all very clear in the PDAF, right? And then the court ruled that the PDAF was unconstitutional, and that the court, I think at that time, also said that its thinking that the congressmen and senators knew more than the executive what the needs of the Filipinos were was erroneous. All right. The court came with its removal of the but the court's ruling said that as long as it was itemized, it was no longer pork. I thought that was a very poor definition of what a pork barrel, if you no offense, meant. As long as it was itemized, it could come in. And so that's what the congressmen did. They itemized and they brought it in. Right? They itemized, and this is what happened during the Duterte administration. They itemized, and although Duterte said he was against corruption, etc., his Speaker of the House said that this was not pork because these were all itemized. All right? That's the start of the whole problem. Then what happened after that was the congressmen decided to make, well, Congress and the executive decided to make the whole DPWH infrastructure.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go to that, ma'am. Now, I'd like to focus on the broad purposes that characterize the pork barrel that was struck down by Belgica. So, are these broad purposes also found in the present unprogrammed appropriations?
Because, Your Honor, the unprogrammed appropriations is used as the vehicle, for pork barrel. It is not itself the pork barrel. It is the vehicle for whatever the Congress...
means to an end.
It's a convenient it's a convenient repository because it's there in the budget. It was used by the congressman as a convenient repository. In other words, this was not what it was before, but it became this way.
All right.
That is my interpretation
Yes,
of what
ma'am.
it is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, Belgica allowed a pause enactment. Before Belgica, the pork barrel allowed a pause enactment political selection. Is this feature also found in the unprogrammed appropriations? And which part of it?
No, it's not. Because I said the unprogrammed appropriations is merely a repository.
Also, ma'am, are you saying that the unprogrammed funds now, which constitute the present pork barrel, does not allow a post-enactment political selection?
I don't think it allows. Ben?
All right,
No,
ma'am.
I don't know the answer to that question.
So
ma'am.
the third one is the PDAF before Belgica bore a release leverage. So is this also found in the unprogrammed appropriations?
Well,
And which part of it?
I don't think the release leverage was part of the law. It just,
It's not
If it's
part
in the-
of the law, yes.
Your Honor, when it goes into the unprogrammed appropriations, the way it becomes pork barrel is because the executive chooses, because everything in the unprogrammed appropriations must be, before it gets out, must be approved by the executive.
So is that the leverage?
That is what I consider
Yes.
leverage.
All right. Very well. So you also mentioned that pork came back with a vengeance.
Oh boy, did it.
And then, which part of the GAAs of 2024 and 2025 are you referring to as pork barrel coming with a vengeance?
Well, the whole DPWH budget became pork barrel because they had this PBMM manner of allocating funds, the allocables and the unallocables, and the allocables were part of the DPWH infrastructure budget, and also the unallocables were even used, and so that's one. The second way it came back with a vengeance is because before the congressmen were only allowed to get pork barrel for their districts, and now in the new pork barrel, congressmen could park their money in other districts, and the other districts' congressmen would get a certain amount of money. I mean, it became a market transaction. That is why I call it a pork barrel with a vengeance. Because, you know, it just became marketplace transactions. Just the original pork barrel was so that the congressmen would be able to put projects in their district. There was no SOP. I don't think that in the United States, when the congressmen have pork barrel, they get SOP. But now apparently the congressmen get SOP, meaning to say it is not only their district that is benefited, it is they that are benefited. And they are benefited more per capita than their district. That's why I call it pork barrel
Yes,
with a
ma'am.
vengeance.
And you also mentioned perverted prioritization. Can you please enlighten us?
By
On that.
perverted prioritization, I mean to say that, for example, the Philippine Development Plan has its priorities, right? The congressmen have the priorities. Their prioritization is completely different or completely out of sync with what the Philippine Development Plan wants. For example, the flood control. You know, so much money was brought to the flood control. That is a perverted prioritization. Flood control was, I mean, the targets for flood control, I don't remember the figures, but the targets for flood control were, for example, 1.2 billion, and actually 1.9 billion was spent for flood control. Some, the orders of magnitude. That is a perverted prioritization.
Yes, very well, ma'am. In your opinion, do we need to totally strike down the unprogrammed appropriations?
Well, Your Honor,
For the sake of good governance, for the sake of busting corruption?
in a single word, ma'am, yes.
Yes.
Because, for example, the current budget secretary, who I have wanted to hear in this court, had a very good research paper on unprogrammed appropriations. And as a researcher, he was saying that unprogrammed appropriations, we are the only country in the world that has unprogrammed appropriations in their budget. So absolutely, it is totally unnecessary. If ever there's one single thing that would allow it, and I don't agree with it myself, is if it had to do with foreign assisted projects. But in this day and age where everything is planned so properly, there is no need for unprogrammed appropriations. There are other items in the budget which cover that.
So-
and other countries use those items.
Yes, ma'am. Is it your position that the total removal of the appropriations, unprogrammed appropriations, will serve as a ghostbuster?
Certainly, but I do not...
A buster of ghost projects?
No. Knowing the initiative of our congressmen and apparently our senators, they will find something else. It is always going to be a game of we'll catch you, we'll stop you, you'll start again. Unfortunately, that's what I think it is. It's not
Catch me if you can.
for them, yes. And it is the Supreme Court that will have to catch them all the time. I'm sorry to say.
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
You may now return to your seat. Baka po napagod kayo. Naka-high heels. Okay, thank you. May I have Professor, former Secretary Jokno, please.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Yes, good morning, sir. Sir, you mentioned that foreign-assisted projects are among the most rigorously evaluated budget items.
Agreed. Your
Yes.
Honor.
However, these projects risk delay because the Constitution does not allow money to be paid out of the Treasury except when there is an appropriation made by law. As a result, we have standby appropriations for foreign-assisted projects to avoid paying commitment fees to multilateral financial institutions. Sir, given that foreign-assisted projects undergo multiple evaluations and are considered at least a year in advance, and if not timely implemented, will expose us to monetary sanctions. Are these not compelling reasons to include them in the program appropriations, which, in the words of the good Solicitor General, the government is committed to unconditionally fund, and that the same compelling reasons equally, if not with more vigor, dictate that we must exclude them from unprogrammed appropriations, the funding of which is not committed by the government?
Thank you, Your Honor. There are two types of foreign assistance projects. Those that are already been finalized and they are included in the budget. And there are those that are still undergoing some negotiation, which will be finalized in the forthcoming fiscal year. So, for example, the Metro Manila Subway project, with an appropriation of 68 billion, was included in the 2024 program appropriation.
Yes.
The North-South Commuter Railway System, with an appropriation of 76.3 billion, was included in the program appropriation. It's those projects that are still undergoing some form of negotiation because it requires, for example, BSP approval, it requires NEDA approval, it requires a lot of things, approval by the IMF or by the World Bank or the ADB, but are likely to be approved in the forthcoming fiscal year that we include in the unprogrammed, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Professor, we did that, the government did that because for every foreign loan, we have a counterpart obligation.
Correct.
Yes, correct. So are we saying that the funds that are programmed for these foreign assisted projects are intended to implement our part of the project? Like, for example, if it is an infrastructure project, the how do you call that? We buy the land, okay, which is an exercise of the power of eminent domain. We expropriate already the lands that are included in our plan for the infrastructure.
That's right, Your Honor.
Yes, so
usually
that's
we
what
require foreign assisted projects. The financing institution require some counterpart fund on the part of the government.
Yes,
so that
sir.
It means you're committed to that project.
So does it mean that for every foreign loan to be released, the grantor requires that the government shall have already implemented its own part in the project, counterpart?
Not necessarily. Some are more lenient than others. They would give the loan proceeds even if the national government has not.
So, sir, for those projects where pending their release or approval, where the government already earmarked funding under the programmed appropriation, okay, I suppose that these projects require the government to already accomplish its counterpart obligation.
Yeah, I always say, Your Honor, that the foreign assisted project should be the most senior among all the budgetary items because it has gone through careful review and it has a very, very high rate of return or economic well-being. It has passed the NEDA review. For example, it is worthwhile to borrow money at, say, 3% if the return of that project will be around 20%. And so that foreign assistance project has passed several reviews. And so that should really be the most senior among all the budgetary items. And I always say, respect the four necessary projects. Do not reduce it or even ignore it. For example, in the 2024 budget, there's an appropriation for Metro Manila Subway of 68 billion. What did Congress do? Zero. North-South Rail Transit Railway System, 74 billion, zero. So that means the project has been delayed. Instead of having the project completed by, say, 2029, we're now talking of 2035.
By the government's own action.
By Congress's action. Yeah.
Yes, by Congress's own action.
Right. And
They're prioritizing.
well, now let me talk about why they want to put that in the unprogram. Okay, some of them, they put in unprogram because they know that the government is committed to continue with the project, so that the government will now find all means to continue with the project. So this is what we call creating their own fiscal space. So in this transaction alone, for the 2024 budget, they took away 161 billion from the budget of the DOTR, transportation, and reduced that to 3.5 billion. So from 161 billion to 3.5 billion, or a cut of 98%. And so
how can that be
you ask Congress.
Yes, I will not. We have no member of Congress here. All right. A former. Who?
So they created their own fiscal space so that they can substitute their own projects,
Yes.
which are usually not well thought out, Your Honor.
That is supplanting.
Correct, Your Honor. So
Thank
this is
you.
really, the changes are not only huge, they are mind-boggling, Your Honor.
Mind-boggling. Okay. Do you agree, sir, that moving the foreign loans counterpart of the country from programmed, which is a commitment unconditionally, to unprogrammed funds, which though unfunded at the beginning, heaven and earth will be moved so that these funds will be raised after the enactment of the GAA. Would you say that this is the moving of a funded programmed appropriation to unprogrammed appropriation when it comes to our commitment, international commitment under the foreign loans, is actually a violation of pacta sunt servanda, or the principle that we ought to fulfill our obligation in good faith?
Agree, Your Honor. And
Yes.
let me answer the previous question, why there is a bias towards program versus unprogrammed. In fact, unprogrammed, the financing of unprogrammed appropriation is very uncertain. Number one, it depends on excess tax revenue. And I interpret that very strictly, Your Honor. You don't know your excess revenue, tax revenue, until the end of the fiscal year, because there's a fluctuation in collection. The other source is excess non-tax revenue, so that's privatization, dividend, etc. And then the third source is the foreign assisted projects, which is more certain, because once the contract, or rather the foreign assisted project is completed, then you are sure of the loan proceeds. So the first 3 years, to me, are really uncertain.
Yes. Okay.
And I started that because I remember that in 1998, I started the concept of GARO. What is GARO? release document, okay? Because it takes 6 months to prepare the budget. I figured it out during Ramos's term. Another 6 months for Congress to act on the budget. And then after the budget is approved, the agencies cannot act yet. They need that GARO.
Yes.
I said no. The General Appropriations Act is the GARO. And therefore, that started the whole thing. So there's now a bias towards program versus
Yes.
unprogram.
Now, sir, thank you for that. Do you agree that the Congress cannot pass a supplemental appropriations law quickly enough to respond to an unfolding crisis, which therefore allegedly justifies the existence of unprogrammed appropriations as a matter of necessity?
Now, this is where the political economy will come in, Your Honor. It's easy if there is an excess revenue to be certified by the Bureau of Treasury. But then when you present a supplemental budget to Congress, and no offense to the congressman here, they will say, well, what's in it for me? So they will change the whole thing, right? So it's going to be very, very difficult to pass a supplemental budget,
Yes.
except in extreme case like maybe during the Yolanda case, and maybe during
The COVID.
COVID.
Yes, COVID, one
But
day.
otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult to pass
Because
a supplemental.
who causes the difficulty?
The Congress and senators will
The
ask what's in it for me.
congresspersons.
Okay, so there will be bilateral, multilateral negotiations. So before you know it, your supplemental budget will be full of pork.
Yes, sir. What do you think is the intention of the framers of the Constitution in putting in place the supplemental budget provision?
Well, it's a nice concept, but as I said, the political economy, it's difficult to come up with a supplemental budget.
So is it a noble provision? Does it guard against anomalies?
If
Guard
everybody
against
is
lack of
well-behaved-
transparency?
If everybody is well behaved, Your Honor, it's easy, and it's a nice concept.
It's a nice concept. All right. So, in your opinion, Professor, will a total strike down of unprogrammed appropriations not diminish, let alone bust corruption?
No, I think we can still have the unprogrammed appropriation, but limit it to the four necessary projects, which was the original concept anyway.
That's the original concept, though it was expanded after Belgica.
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right. So, in the context of ghost flood control, will a total strike down of unprogrammed appropriations serve as an effective ghostbuster?
I was looking at the program, Your Honor. It has actually there's an item in the program called SIP, and I think we mentioned
Yes,
this.
it becomes Sagip.
Now it becomes Sagip.
Yes, it sounds more decent now. Sagip.
No, but let me see if I still have it here with me. But you know, the Sagip has expanded in 2024, has expanded. Sagip, by the way, is not, it's strengthening assistance for government infrastructure and social programs. That's the acronym of Sagip. Okay? The President's request was 50 billion unprogrammed. You know what Congress did? They increased this to 225 billion, or an increase of 350%. So this is kind of, they know that this is where the money is, and they expanded it by 350%.
Sir, would you say that Sagip is couched in so broad a term?
It's anything under
Anything under sun. Which is not included under the sun,
Nothing.
insofar as Sagip is concerned.
You can think of any project. And there's also
For
this.
as long as there is sun.
There's also another project here called Tupad, which is also another pork barrel, Your Honor.
Another pork barrel. Tupad and sagip. All right. Sir, thank you very much. May I call on Secretary Abad? Respectfully. Good morning, sir. You're a former Secretary of Budget and a former congressperson. Or are you an incumbent congressperson?
I was formerly, I served for about 12 years, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Are you retired as a congressperson?
Practically, sir, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sir, you mentioned that unprogrammed appropriations are exceptional because under normal fiscal conditions, they are not meant to operate. What do you mean by normal fiscal conditions?
For example, there are two fiscal triggers that can activate the unprogrammed appropriations. One is the excess collections in tax revenues and non-tax revenues, and the other one is new sources of tax revenue. Now, historically, if you look at the fiscal performance of the country, there had been only 4 instances where we had surplus, where the budget enjoyed a surplus. This was from 1994 to 1997 during the time of President Fidel Ramos. And insofar as excess revenues exceeding revenue target is concerned, I think we go all the way back to the 70s when that happened. Although the DOF once said that in 2024 they collected more than what they targeted, but I think if we look at closely at what really happened, they included the cash extractions from PhilHealth and PDIC, and that's why they could report excess revenues, which they said happened only in 2001, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you for that. Sir, if we have normal fiscal conditions, which you already explained, do we have the counterpart abnormal fiscal conditions? Or to put it more positively, using your term, exceptional fiscal conditions. There are exceptional fiscal conditions, there are, I suppose, normal fiscal conditions.
Well, insofar as unprogrammed appropriations are concerned, the normal conditions is that those first 2 fiscal triggers do not normally happen.
Okay.
And what is exception is when excess revenues are happen. But in the case of this recent past, what led to the activation of unprogrammed appropriations resulting from excess revenues was to treat the different revenue streams individually. For example, excess non-tax revenue collections, for example. But in the case of the PDAF decision, the court said that, I think in the DAP decision, the court said that we must treat revenue streams holistically. That's why that cannot apply anymore, Your Honor.
All right. Sir, so in the absence of exceptional fiscal conditions that justified the unprogrammed appropriations under GAs of 2025, is that a ground to nullify these unprogrammed appropriations?
Well, the only possible way that the unprogrammed appropriations could be triggered, I mentioned the first one, which is the treating the revenue stream separately. The other one is the possibility that a surplus may exist, but it would not be enough to fund the whole unprogrammed appropriations, in which case you find yourselves in a post-enactment budget execution phase. So therefore, the function of determining what gets funded and to what extent, and what does not get funded migrates to the executive.
To the executive, which is a post-enactment
That's correct.
discretion.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. So, do you recall if these triggers also applied to the unprogrammed funds under your term as DBM Secretary?
I think so, to the extent of the excesses in the dividend collections of government. But that was the time when separate revenue streams as trigger was allowed, and before the decision to treat them holistically was made.
All right, sir. Are the triggers to operationalize unprogrammed appropriations consistent with sound fiscal policy?
Can I hear that question again?
Yes. Are the triggers to operationalize unprogrammed appropriations consistent with sound fiscal policy?
I do not think so, Your Honor. First of all, as I said, what happens when there is a trigger? The institutional relationships, let's say between the executive and the legislature, get a bit confused because the functions then are performed. What is exclusively a legislative function is performed by the executive. Department. So you create a confusion, and in a confusion, fiscal management becomes very difficult to happen.
It's blurred.
Yes, Your Honor.
So there is a view that unprogrammed appropriations are necessary to allow flexibility. But you mentioned the Constitution itself allows flexibility. How so?
Well, there is one constitutional provision textually. This is allowed through the special appropriation, Your Honor. And in the special appropriation, I think, why I found it a most preferred way of exercising flexibility is because first of all, textually, it exists in the Constitution. Structurally, it follows the process mandated by the Constitution, which is the executive prepares the budget, the legislature enacts it, and the executive implements it. And third, I think it enhances public accountability because when you enact the special appropriation, you still subject it to public debates and the publicly the proponents and the opponents of the measure are able to express their ideas in public, and decisions are made, like for example eventual passing or amendments made or decisions made are made in public and not in secret. And finally, I think it enhances also the institutional relationships because there you respect the role of the legislature as the branch that is solely, exclusively responsible for budget enactment, Your Honor.
Yes, from what I gather, the sole or main objection against resorting to supplemental budget is the perceived delay. Do you agree?
Well, if we go by
perceived delay in the passage of the law.
If you go by the information provided by the Solgen, that it only takes on the average 50 days to pass a foreign assisted project, that is not delay for me. For me, that is efficiency, Your Honor. And I think the Constitution is very clear. The structure, the institutional relationships mandated by the Constitution always prevail over issues of efficiency, Madam, Your Honor.
And efficiency and the law, they can go together.
That's correct. Your
Yes,
Honor.
efficiency,
Well,
transparency, and constitutional compliance.
And I think the reason why it may only take, let's say, assuming that's correct, 50 days, there are two reasons for that. One is, as already expounded by Secretary Diokno, foreign assisted projects are the most deliberated items in the budget. Just to get a project through the ICC of NEDA may take you a year. And after the ICC of NEDA approves it, it has to go through the NEDA board for approval by the President and the Cabinet. But it's not enough. That's not the end of it, because it has to go through a similar screening process by the funding agency or the creditor international bank. So it takes a while. On top of that, I think the fear that the legislators may exact some favor in return for the passage is that there is no way you can decrease or increase the foreign assisted project funds, because these are negotiated agreement already signed, and therefore they cannot be changed, Your Honor.
Yes, so the safeguards are in place.
Very much in place, Your Honor.
Transparency, honesty, efficiency, and most of all, it's nil. No, the chance of pursuing one's personal interest is also nil.
In foreign assisted projects, Your Honor, you cannot change the signed loan agreement already.
Correct. So actually it's not just delay. There's no delay. Even I can't see delay for example, 50 days. And I think the certification by the President, whenever a supplemental budget is proposed, will always be present and will be a big factor to speed up the legislation.
Yes, Your Honor. And I forgot to mention, there is a mandatory approval by the Monetary Board for a loan to be undertaken. So you add that on top of that, and I think you can convince the legislators that there's no way that you can tamper or touch the loan.
So what weighs more, the advantages of passing resorting to supplemental budget, or simply resorting to unprogrammed appropriations?
I think if we talk about the Constitution, textually, it's in the Constitution. Structurally, it follows the process dictated by the Constitution, and then institutionally, it keeps the separation of powers and independence of branches pretty much respected, Your Honor.
Would you say that resort to unprogrammed appropriations is a circumvention in order to avoid compliance or resort to the process prescribed by the Constitution?
Well, you know, foregoing with policy because of convenience always creates problems, Your Honor.
All right. Very well. Thank you very much, Secretary.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. May I have Senator Drilon, please? Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning,
Good morning.
sir. During your multiple terms as former Senate President and longtime Senator of the Republic of the Philippines, how did the Senate effect compliance with Article 6, Section 25(1) and Article 14, Section 5(5) of the Constitution?
Okay. First, on Article 6, may not increase the appropriations. what we look at is the bottom line. What is the appropriation submitted in the President's budget? And in our theory, so long as that is not exceeded, we do not violate the Constitution. So what do? We rearrange the chairs, so-called, and in the earlier part of our my stint of my term in the department, in the Congress, we did look at various items which can be reduced and maintain the bottom expense budget. Example, payment of interest and loans are denominated in pesos and therefore assumes a certain exchange rate. When the economic managers would come before the Senate, we would ask them, what is your basis for appropriating, say, 50 million pesos in payment of interest for loans? The budget people will tell us it is based on an exchange rate of 50 pesos to $1. And we tell them, you do not have faith in our own budget people. It should only be $40 at 40 pesos to $1. And therefore we create fiscal space of 10 pesos, or in that example. And therefore that is the source of funding of the pet projects of members of Congress. Today they have discarded all of that. They just they just transferred the items that appear in the programmed appropriation into the unprogrammed appropriation in order to create fiscal space to where they can put in their own projects. On the second one, the state shall assign the highest priority to education and etc., etc. When the budget is submitted by the executive department, the assumption is that they have complying with Article 14, Section 5, paragraph, and would provide the highest priority to education, etc., etc. And this usually is respected or even maybe augmented by Congress because, Madam Justice, education is a favorite item for pork barrel. How? Scholarship funds is a source of pork barrel. When you appropriate scholarship funds for the needy, then you put it as a pork barrel of the proponent. And usually the allocation is in educational institutions in the district of the congressman. So we cannot legislate morality here, so we might be cracking our heads trying to figure out how to stop this one. In fact, you cannot, because you have to go back to whether or not the legislators have enough conscience in order to prevent themselves from doing this. And in this particular case, wala na pong konsensya. Pinaglilipat na yung programmed appropriations which are needed in order to move our economy, move to the unprogrammed portion so that the fiscal space is created for pork barrel. And ma'am, I find difficulty, finding a solution to that because it goes back to the morality of the legislators in self-restraint to exercise their powers only for the benefit of the people.
Thank you, sir. My next question is about Araulio versus Aquino.
I'm sorry?
Araulio versus Aquino, sir.
Yes.
Yes. So, our decision there states that revenue targets should be considered as a whole and not individually. Otherwise, we would be dealing with artificial revenue surpluses. The requirement that revenue collections must exceed revenue target should be understood to mean that the revenue collections must exceed the total of the revenue targets stated in the BESF. Moreover, to release the unprogrammed funds simply because there was an excess revenue as to one source of revenue would be an unsound fiscal management measure, because it would disregard the budget plan and foster budget deficits in contravention of the government's surplus budget policy. We all know that on motion for reconsideration by the government, the court maintained the position that aggregate revenue collection must first exceed aggregate revenue target as a prerequisite to the use of unprogrammed funds. But it clarified, and I quote, the notion that the release of unprogrammed funds may only occur at the end of the fiscal year, close quote. It ruled that, pursuant to the foregoing, the DBM and the COA require agencies under various joint circulars to submit budget and financial accountability reports on a regular basis, one of which is the quarterly report of income or quarterly report of revenue and other receipts. On the other hand, as Justice Carpio points out in his separate opinion, the Development Budget Coordination Committee acts quarterly revenue targets quarterly revenue targets for a specific fiscal year. Since information on both actual revenue collections and targets are made available every quarter, or such time as the DBM may prescribe, actual revenue surplus may be determined accordingly, and release from the unprogrammed fund may take place even prior to the end of the year. Mr. Senator, from your point of view, are these two rulings consistent?
To me, the position taken by the executive branch of the Supreme Court's decision is inconsistent with the decision of the court, when instead of taking the whole revenue program as the standard upon which excess revenue can be determined for purposes of the unprogrammed appropriation, that decision of the Supreme Court, if strictly followed, would have avoided all of these loopholes that we are seeing now. The fact that the Supreme Court's decision was interpreted to mean individual revenue targets, not the whole revenue target of the government, justified the releases that we saw in the last several years.
Sir, you mentioned in your presentation, you're urging the court to revisit our ruling in this case. Which part would you like to revisit?
I can't specify exactly which parts, ma'am, but what I'm just saying is, if followed strictly, if implemented to the letter, it could have been a deterrent to the excesses that we saw. Unfortunately, to justify the releases of the unprogrammed funds, what the Department of the Budget did was to look at individual revenue sources. And once that individual revenue source is exceeded, that justified the certification from the treasurer that unprogrammed appropriations can be funded.
Is that allowed in Araulio?
I cannot answer that, Your Honor. I'm just saying that as a matter of compliance with the court's decision, if we consistently just considered the whole revenue program as the guidepost before we fund unprogrammed funds, all of these shenanigans could have been probably prevented.
Sir, are you for a total strike down of unprogrammed appropriation?
In theoretically, in my view as a student of constitutional law, my submission, Your Honor, is that unprogrammed appropriation is within the power of Congress to enact. Power over the purse would give that power to Congress, except that there are certain constitutional guideposts and limitations that must be observed. My submission is that there is nothing in the Constitution which prohibits unprogrammed appropriation, but it is the compliance with the guardrails that has resulted in the abuses that we saw.
All right. Do we have existing guardrails yet?
Not in this particular case, because an appropriated program appropriations, to my understanding and my knowledge, this is a case of first impression.
All right, sir. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much,
Senator. May I have, yes, Governor Salceda? Congressperson, Governor.
Honorable Chief Justice and all justices. Ma'am.
Yes, sir. Good
Justice
morning.
Amy. Good morning po.
Sir, on the second day of the oral argument, you stated that invalidating unprogrammed appropriations will leave the government without a crisis instrument and no replacement in place. You also mentioned that Congress cannot pass a supplemental appropriations law quickly enough to respond to an unfolding crisis. Is it your position, sir, that the perceived delay in the enactment of supplemental budget was not taken into consideration by the framers of the Constitution when they provide the provision on the passage of supplemental appropriations in case of emergency or urgency requiring additional or new funding?
I think, ma'am, the mere fact na hindi nila nilagay yun is already a way of saying that there will be, because the budget is the principal instrument of public welfare to increase wealth, reduce poverty, improve our competitiveness. So, kung tatanggalin mo yung isang instrumento na magagawa natin to, I think it is, I think, hindi lang sa masasayang, kundi kaya nga po sa apat na konstitusyon na dinaanan natin, laging nilalagay yung program, and then yung gastos ng gobyerno, then yung mga programa.
Yes po. Ang ibig bang sabihin, yung ating framers ng Constitution, hindi nila naisip na ang provision na to magkukos ng delay sa pag-enact natin ng supplemental budget. Hindi po, is it your opinion, but these people did not think of this possible problem brought about by the perceived delay in the enactment of a supplemental budget that will stall the projects of the government.
Actually, baliktad po, ma'am. For kami chair dito, may I respectfully state that the supplemental budget of 2006 took 70 days to be transmitted. So nangyari na po yung crisis. And then, so to the date of filing, it only took that fast because there was no Noong 2006, mabilis kasi reenacted budget. So wala kang kailangan RRA 10634. Another supplemental budget was transmitted to the President on December 12, 2013. That is 135 days after Typhoon Labuyo. The first reason that was cited for the enactment of the sin taxes. B, I also note that they were enacted in response to natural disaster affecting some parts of the country like Bicol. We need rapid response. Natutunan ko kay Ma'am na sabi ko kay Ma'am dati, pwede ba yung i-postpone natin yung appropriation para gumanda ang No, Joey, you cannot do that. That is the first day we met each other and said, every life is important. So you cannot postpone not a single cent of government appropriation just for the sake. Nasa Manila Hilton tayo. So you're changing your view. Okay, so...
Oo, kasi sabi ni Ma'am, nung sinabi niya yon, wala pang unprogrammed appropriations.
Ma'am, there was unprogrammed appropriation since 1932. Every year thereafter, there is every APRO, there is an unprogrammed. Ang pinagpipilian lang naman natin dito, gusto niyo ba ng supplemental na lang? O gusto niyo ba ng itong naabuso na appropriation? Para sa akin, yung unang guardrails na dapat lumabas muna yung approval ng ICC NEDA. Pangalawa, na dapat hindi lang yung isa revenue, kundi yung buong revenue. Number 3, na dapat yung revenue recurring. Hindi po pwede. Kasi pambayad natin yun eh. So, kasi basically, we are coming from presumption that we are borrowing. And therefore, paano mo mababayaran yun kung bigla mo na lang binenta yung BCDA, hindi mo yung po pwedeng gamitin para pondohan ang isang unprogrammed appropriation.
Sir, thank you. Can you please provide more context to your statement during the last oral argument that striking down unprogrammed appropriations totally will neither breed nor bust the ghost of the flood control?
Ilang mga congressman dito?
You need water, sir. There's water in front of you.
Hindi ko alam na hindi ko pa ma-imagine po, sir, na you can avoid without sacrificing the overarching aspiration of the Constitution with respect to the budget. 1, to reduce poverty. 2, to improve competitiveness. And 3, so, kasama po yata para pong original sin.
Original mortal sin.
So, hindi mo tumatawa yung classmate ko. So, I think, ma'am, I can provide a more specific way, let's say, that is probably more in consonant and that will probably satisfy the confidence of our people in the way we do our budgets. So, marami naman po na mga guardrails that can be done, and therefore I think, ma'am, I think it's not as if that there are only bad people. There are good.
That's the problem. If there are only bad people, but for as long as there are good people, and for as long as these good people are not outnumbered by bad people, we have hope.
Pero my position really, ma'am, is that we need rather than supplemental, which takes very long.
Oh, sir, is it your position that the supplemental budget provision is useless?
Po?
It is useless.
Oh,
Because we can do the easier way of just providing for unprogrammed appropriation.
May mga
Kasi may mga guardrails ang supplemental budget under the Constitution that are not found in the appropriations of unprogrammed funds. Umiiwas ba tayo?
Hindi po. Katulad ng Riming, nung halos buong albay ay nawasak. Hindi mo kukuha sa supplemental yun.
Okay, sir. Pwede bang kunin sa contingency fund ng governor?
Kulang po.
Kulang. Sama na natin yung sa presidente. Kulang pa rin?
Well, I think there is rhythm and not magic, but there's a rhythm to the way we do our budget, in the way that we try to apportion as much as possible the appropriate amounts. For example,
The SWD.
kulang po yan, ma'am.
Kulang. Kahit naman mag-supplemental budget ay kulang pa din. Hindi ba?
Po?
Kahit mag-supplemental budget ay kulang pa rin. It's not enough. It's just that we can start our rehab, we can start helping out the victims for their food, for their shelter. In the meantime that we're going through the supplemental budget. And I cannot imagine the Congress not heeding the advice of the President for an emergency measure to be immediately enacted.
There are angels in Congress.
Angels in Congress.
But, ma'am, it took the lowest is 70 days before the government was able to use the supplemental budget. It took 135 days in 20 for Yolanda, for Typhoon Labuyo.
Okay.
So in other words, ma'am, there is a time lag. So it is, I think we can strike a balance with having guardrails with respect to the appropriations vis-a-vis providing a supplemental budget. So we can have both. But generally, the tendency is for all of us here have 3 terms as chairperson, and we know that you have PS, MOE, COE, then after that you have all these contingent funds, you have the supplemental funds, then you have the NDRMF funds. So all told, ma'am, in my remembrance, kulang po, hindi kaya kung wala ang kung dun lang po tayo sa supplemental budget. Unang-una, ano rin po yung parameters na gagamitin mo para po ma-set. Ano ba yan? 30 billion? Tapos sasabihin nyo, ilagay nyo na lang sa NDRRF. So I think there is rhythm to budget formulation. And I guess the participation of the people is very important.
Rhythm, the beat.
Yes.
Who's holding it? Thank you, sir.
I'll just close your room. Sabi ng justice. Face me, sir. Harap ka sa akin, sir.
Thank you, Governor, for your gracious answers.
Salamat po.
Salamat po. Last part of my interpellation is reserved for the good Solicitor General.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Madam Solicitor General, what is the difference between contingency funds provided under program funds for new or urgent activities or projects of national government agencies on one hand, and what the good Solicitor General refers to as standby funds for important but not urgent projects under the unprogrammed appropriation?
Your Honor, the contingent fund under the programmed appropriation would have automatic funding through the GAA for the purposes which fall under that single purpose of contingent fund. On the other hand, the unprogrammed appropriation would be identified purposes as well, and what is on standby or what is contingent is the source of funding. So, in other words, the Congress, I was listening to the discussion a while ago as to whether there is post-enactment decision by the executive. It is the position of the Republic that in fact it is the Congress that is deciding what already are the purposes that it wishes to spend on if the triggers happen.
Yes, Madam Solicitor General, my point is, while the contingency funds under the program funds are earmarked for new or urgent activities or projects of national government, how is that different from the standby funds, which you said are for urgent projects, but not for important but not so urgent projects under the unprogrammed appropriation? Are they not the same?
Your Honor, it is our submission that the specific purposes, for example, the AFP modernization or risk management program, social infrastructure programs, so these are identified with PAPs, and as I mentioned, it is only the funding that is contingent.
Yes, the same purpose but different sources of funds. Same purpose. For example, AFP. We discussed before that AFP modernization has double funding. One is found in program funds and part of it is found in unprogrammed funds, and we have not yet explained why the splitting was done.
Your Honor, if I may amplify the answer that I provided before, the explanation to us was part of the ongoing program. For example, for AFP modernization, so for example, it needs 2 billion pesos. the ongoing programs would probably require 1.5 billion pesos, and that should go to the program. And the 0.5, which is not part of an ongoing activities and could be parked under the UA and could wait for further funding, then that could be transferred to the UA.
Were we able to realize the 10 billion funding? Is that 10 billion? Yes. Were we able to realize that under the unprogrammed funds?
Your Honor, I do not have the information.
Please inform the court in time.
May I clarify, Your Honor? So that is for 2024 unprogrammed appropriation with regard to the AFP modernization.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
So I would like, to be informed whether we were able to raise this 10 billion fund.
Your Honor, may I ask if the information is available?
You may do so in your submission to the court.
We will comply, Your Honor.
Yes. So, based on the GAAs of 2024 and 2025, there were overlapping items found both in the program and programmed appropriations, such as PGN, Bridges Project, and as I've said, the revised AFP modernization. Is it constitutional for Congress to enact a supplemental budget to provide a third source of funding for these projects already covered under both program and unprogrammed appropriations?
It is our position, Your Honor, that the mention or the provision on supplemental appropriation does not prohibit the unprogrammed appropriations under the Constitution.
So an item can have funding under the program, second funding under the unprogrammed, and third funding under the supplemental budget.
That could be possible, Your Honor. And may I also add that budgeting doesn't just constitute a request of funds, but there is a lot of study and purposes and discussions in the executive as well as Congress when we present our budgets to Congress. So it is, well, the short answer to your question, Your Honor, is it is possible.
Yes. So have we done this before? Has Congress done this before, providing 3 sources of funds earmarked for the same purpose?
Your Honor, I am not aware.
Yes, please also submit information on that.
We will comply, Your Honor.
Okay. Of course, you are familiar with the PG and Bridges project. It was conceptualized in 1999 when the Japan International Cooperation Agency submitted a master plan for 2 bridges to connect the islands of Panay, Guimaras, and Negros. In 2013, the total cost of the project was estimated at 28.5 billion. By 2022, this estimate has ballooned to 186.54 billion. At present, the government pegs the construction cost at 300 billion. This has been an anticipated expense of the government since 1999. And this is also our commitment to our creditor, foreign creditor. Would you say that the construction of the PG and bridges can be categorized using your words as equally important but not urgent expenditure of the government?
Your Honor, it is difficult for us to make a conclusion unless we are present to listen to the different information that was received by, for example, by the Congress, by the committee that was deliberating on it, with regard to the questions on whether something is sound fiscal policy. May I share with you, in the course of these oral arguments, there have been a lot of changes in our impressions and insights as we listen to more discussions from our clients, namely the Congress, the Senate, the DBCC, the DepDev, the DBM. So meaning, as we ask more questions, we appreciate more that there is so much to absorb and there is so much to listen to and to consider before we are able to say this is the most sound fiscal policy, which makes us see that if a power is really lodged in one branch, then there is also merit in giving them the leeway to listen to all the considerations for them who have the power to call on the many experts. I have my reservation because although we are the counsel for respondents, I am also more legal than technical, and I might not be able to make this court fully appreciate the technical aspect of the things that we are explaining.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said, Madam Solicitor General. Now, under the 2024, 2025, and 2026 GAAs, there is a recurring provision, specifically special provision numbers 15, 10, and 8 respectively, which authorizes the DBM to, and I quote, use appropriations under the purposes of the unprogrammed funds to cover deficiencies in the amounts authorized in any of the purposes under the unprogrammed appropriations. In essence, this recurring provision appears to authorize the DBM to transfer appropriations under one item in the unprogrammed fund to another item post-enactment. So let's examine if this is a valid post-enactment measure. First, does this post-enactment transfer comply with Article 6, Section 25(5) of the Constitution, as explained in Arroyo versus Aquino, given that, first, the DBM is not one of the authorized heads of offices that can transfer savings under the Constitution. Two, the transfer does not involve any savings, as the DBM has been granted an unqualified blanket authority to transfer any appropriation from one item to another within unprogrammed funds. And three, the purpose of the transfer crosses other offices and are not limited within the respective offices of those authorized under the Constitution. So, is it fair to say that the post-enactment transfer provision of 2025, 2024, and 2026 GAA on unprogrammed appropriations, is not justified under Article 6, Section 25(5) of the 1987 Constitution?
Your Honor, the way we understood this based on our briefing. The analogy that was given was like if a budget has been appropriated for an agency and that agency can transfer or can modify the use, for example, of that budget from one program to another, provided that it is within the agency. So there are authorizations that are required. I remember that there is an authorization required for a head of agency, or of course the provision on the augmentation under the Constitution will have to be respected
That is not
primordially.
found in the provision. That is not found in the provision. All right. So, is post-enactment transfer justified under the guidelines of Belgica?
Yes, Your Honor.
Post-enactment
I'm sorry, Your
is
Honor.
justified under the guide. Yes. So you're changing your answer.
Yes,
It's
Your
not
Honor.
justified.
It is not justified.
Yes. Is it not this provision recurring under numbers 15, 10, and 8 under 2025 to 2026 GAA? Okay. Is this not the same as the pork barrel that was invalidated under Belgica?
Under the Belgica, there were amounts that were reserved for legislators, and also I think there was more express authority that was given to legislators to identify their projects, and which means that and that's why under the Belgica the post-enactment legislation was invalidated.
Yes, but here, what parameters do we see from the provision? Do you see? Can you read from the text guardrails or guidelines before the DBM can exercise this authority under this recurring provision?
Yes, Your Honor. I would say that the one that they shared with us as to the power to modify budgets within departments.
Is that within the power of the DBM?
It's within the power of the executive, and yes, Your Honor, in the DBM.
To transfer from one item to another item without even stating that it should be within the same agency. And does DBM have that authority under the Constitution and existing jurisprudence to make such transfer? Remember, the discretion is full. It's unqualified.
Yes, Your Honor. I would say that the provision on augmentation under the Constitution is primordial to and is the guardrail for letter B on number 15. And what is, I think, contemplated on letter B is the power to modify within an agency.
You know,
only.
my problem is this. What you're saying is not in the text of the provision. So, if the text does not distinguish, why should we? Okay, thank you very much, and happy anniversary again, my friend.
Thank you for your message as well.
Thank you.
Justice.
Marami. My spirit is with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honors.
May I yield the floor to the Chief Justice. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Chief
Justice Ami. It's past 12 o'clock. We'll suspend the session for lunch break. As usual, we provided the lunch to our amicus, amici, and the counsels for the petitioner, except for the Soldier, of course. We cannot fund that. So we'll suspend the session and resume at 1:30. Thank you very much.
All rise. Please remain standing while the Chief Justice, the Senior Associate Justice, and the Associate Justices leave the session hall.
That preacher will always be. Oh, God. Oh. Hey, baby.